Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. It's Yvonne from GingerChickRehab. I'm so glad to have you back checking out what Chris and I are up to today. So in today's video, oh my goodness, I am super excited. Do you all kind of have, I guess you call it a bucket list, or when you're out thrifting, yard sailing, estate sailing, secondhand stores, there's always those items that you're like, I really wish that I would run across this and be able to make it over or do something with it. So on my list was always been vintage suitcases, which I don't find very often, especially ones that I can make over. So yeah, so one day I'm out doing a warehouse sale at one of the local thrift stores, and here's this one. And then I thought, oh, well, it's priced under $5. Perfect. And so then I'm like, oh, to make a video, it'd really be nice, God, if I had two, So I kid you not, God wink moment, next day, going to Goodwill, there was another suitcase for the $5 price range. So, yep, now I can make a video and I can check it off my list of things that, I've always wanted to try to do. So old vintage suitcases, yep, have always been on my want-to-do list, and running across this at a local thrift store's warehouse sale, I was in heaven, especially at the $4.99 price tag. And this one on the outer is in pretty good shape, I'd have to say, but the innard, oh my goodness, even with my bad sense of smell since COVID, this smells atrocious. So no, I'm not going to try to save any of this inside. And here's a God wink moment. I really wept for finding that one. I'm like, God, I really like to have two of those. I really like to do things in pairs or threes. So going the next day to my local Goodwill, and then what was there? Here was another vintage suitcase. Now this one's definitely a lot worse for wear, but I asked for it, so I will take what I am given. But yes, definitely not in the best of condition at all, and especially the Sharpie written on the front. But this one was still in that $5 price range. And then yes, it does have the key inside, but between both the key and the locks themselves, they are beyond their days. So yep, definitely need to rip out this innard also. Yep, the smell is not good, y'all. And then since I happened to have a head cold, Chris was so kind to take on the challenge of ripping out all the innards on the inside of these suitcases. Yes, you definitely wanted to wear a mask. And if you can't already breathe, putting a mask on is not going to help you breathe any better. So yes, this is just quite a tackling job. They definitely didn't want these innards to come out. And then once you got the layer of fabric, then it was all about getting all the pieces of cardboard off. And then this one on the inside had some, there was another shelf on top of it, so that kept all the layers separated. So some of the hardware just plain and simply can't be removed, because then you would have holes on the outside. So he has to work around that, not only getting the fabric out, but getting it as flat as you can with the cardboard once removing all this fabric. Now I'm going to tackle the task of seeing if I can get this clean. I don't know if it's going to happen or not. So I got my Scrub Daddy out with some of my paste to see. This is a layer of fabric on top of this suitcase. You can see that it's got some bleaching going on. I definitely know that there is a lot of dirt. So I thought, okay, let's just, everything you thrift just takes a different thought process and how to tackle it. And these were definitely, I've only ever done a couple other suitcases that were just black. I didn't have to paint them. I just put a transfer on them. And so I've always wanted to transform some of these type of vintage suitcases. But as you can see, I'm like, oh my goodness, my scrub daddy is just getting all brown. So I really rethought that, going, okay, well, maybe I can use my carpet cleaner on this to see, because how am I going to suck all that out? Some things are just gross. Well, at least I know that I've got that outside really clean now. So now it's time to do the inside. And Chris did a fabulous job getting all this stuff out. Yep, there's still a layer of cardboard underneath there, but we're going to making some side tables. That's not going to bother me because he's going to go ahead and cut a piece of wood for the bottom so it's structurally strong. So now I just need to make sure that I get everything wiped out. And it's amazing. Even with the little smell that I do have, I don't smell anything. It was all that fabric holding on that smell. And since the insides are definitely a hot mess, I'm not going to try to replace fabric. Fabric would be way too expensive. I don't even know after I create these if anybody will buy them. So, yep, black it is. Yep, I'm just going in with that Waverly ink chalk paint because I know that this is dry inside and that Waverly ink is so pigmented that it will just probably take in one coat. And it's funny, when Chris was taking these apart, I said something about painting them black. And so Chris, poor guy, thought that I was going to paint the entire suitcase black. Nope, just the inside I'm going to paint black. I am going to add some contact paper, some decorative paper in the inside to still make it look pretty. But just to cover all this up, as you see, I'm staying away from the sides. Nope, I have a different plan for the outers. So these are the boards that Chris cut to fit the inside, so I'm going to go ahead. I'm not sure where the contact paper is going to fit. I want to be able to hide screws, so I'm going to give these a light sanding because it's just plywood, so you know plywood is very raw. I want to make sure that it's nice and smooth, so when I put the contact paper on top of it, you don't see all those bumps. And then I also want to go ahead and paint it black just in case whatever contact paper I end up picking is going, if it doesn't completely fit, at least I have some pretty black to show that blends in with the sides. That Waverly ink chalk paint is dry. I need to get it sealed in, so I'm just using some Rust-Oleum clear coat to achieve this. So I know this suitcase is not in bad shape, but I'm not really sure about the goldy color. If I'm going to take the time to make these over, I want them to be something that hopefully somebody wants to buy. So my plans were really just to leave them as vintage as they was and just to make them side tables. But, you know, we're painters, that's what we do. And especially since the one didn't clean up very well at all, I decided, yep, I'm going in with some paint. So I tried to look at my stash of colors to see, yes, I do have a few colors in my stash. And, yep, so they are neutrals. They are brownishes in color. So, yes, I'm going in with Waverly's mineral chalk paint on this first one, so I'm going to try to leave that leather strapping on the side. I will accent that with a different color, but yes, chalk paint should stick to this just fine. And yeah, so yep, it's going to be a lot of little delicate painting. I didn't want to spend the time to tape off. That leather has a raised lip, so I just used my detail brush like I would use to paint trim, but this is also one of those really soft bristle brushes, so it's great for chalk paint. Now for this next one that has that layer of fabric and that houndstooth, I think it's called, pattern on it. So let's hope that my Fawn, my chalk paint in Fawn, and this is actually a fun color. I don't know, I'm so sorry that a lot of the Walmarts have stopped carrying the chalk paints, but I've used this on a different project and I did really love the color of it. So yep, I'm going to go in with 2 coats of this, just very gingerly. Some of this bottom, the edging had come off, but I cleaned it, I set it off to the side. I'm going to glue it back on, but for right now I'm not going to worry about it. I'm going to get that edge and try to make as straight a line as I can, just freehanding it. But yes, I think that this will absorb into the fabric just fine. The hardware is definitely something that you can't take off, so you have to work around it. So I am going to deal with that later of what color to make it, but I'm going to go in with a little detail brush and do the best as I can, just freehanding. Sometimes trying to tape off just leaves just as much of a gap as trying to freehand it. So yep, I'm just going to go in with a little detail brush and freehand around this. But I definitely love the handle on this one, but of course all the other hardware on it is definitely rusted, definitely showing its age. And we'll see how it goes with the second coat, if it covers up that pattern or not. Maybe it'll just be something that might show. I thought while I'm waiting for that first coat to dry, there's no reason that I can't go in and do what I can see of the leather side binding. Sure, that sounds good. So I'm just going in, and I went in my stash. I tried to see what coordinating browns I had going on. So I have this cocoa bean, and I definitely, because of some of the really dark spots on this leather, how you can tell that it's aged, I'm like, I think that this should be able to cover that up, and I definitely think it's going to accentuate that fawn color. I definitely still want to keep those vintage colors going on. I just wanted to bring them up to date just a little bit. And then for my other suitcase, even though the leather is in great shape, I just feel since I've already painted the suitcase, I might as well go in and paint this also. So this one, I'm using Waverly's Truffle chalk paint, which is basically the same color as it already was. Now, after I painted 2 coats on the trim, on the bottom, yep, the houndstooth covered up perfectly, yay. And so I'm going ahead, and before I flip it over to get all the other areas that I have not painted yet, I'm sealing that in with some Rust-Oleum clear coat. Yes, painting these is definitely one of those processes, because even after I get this surface area that I couldn't reach and I didn't want to glob paint or have drips or runs happening, then I have to open it up and then get that little lip in the inside. But yeah, you have to love what you do. So yep, and I definitely am having a lot of fun painting these up. I really think Chris did the hard part of getting all that innards out of them. So now when it comes to the hardware, I'm using the Rub and Buff. So I have a brass goldy one for this suitcase, and then I have the silver for the other suitcase. So definitely that's coming in handy, because yeah, I can't take it off. I'm not going to tape off to try to spray it. And I think a couple coats of this will just shine it up. Well, the nice thing is, it seems like I always have something that I can work on while I'm waiting for other paint to dry. So yep, I'm going to go ahead and just seal this in again with the Rust-Oleum clear coat, making sure that I got all the surface areas. Yep, especially where I've done the trim and I've done that Rub and Buff. So yeah, so far so good. Yep, you do see some wrinkles. That is a material. It is what it is. It is an old repurposed vintage suitcase. And yes, just as when I thought I was done painting, nope, I have to open that suitcase up, and now I gotta work on this little bit of a lip, making sure that I've covered up all that original. So now this is why we cut the board. So I actually have seen these for sale that other people have done, and the only thing that I felt is that they were wobbly, they were wonky, they just attached the legs to the bottom, and I want my pieces. We are rough and tough on our furniture, so with animals and just living life. Yes, so that's what the wood was going to be used for, because there's really not much substance to the bottom of these vintage suitcases, so that's what the wood was for. So when he goes to screw in the legs, and yes, I chose to do these almost an industrial style, I know, off of Amazon because they were the most cost efficient. I checked out wood ones, but oh yeah, I couldn't, especially if you don't know if they're going to sell or not. So I do think that I can tie the black in with these vintage suitcases. So I'm holding the wood inside so it doesn't shift because there's a rounded edge in the inside of this as Chris is screwing on these legs. After he gets at least the 2 legs on, then the wood should not shift anymore, and then he can go in and actually these are nice because they have, I think, 6 screws that will be holding into that wood. That's just how we are. We just want to make sure that, you know, once we sell something, hopefully it doesn't fall apart on somebody. We can at least try. I have some of this leftover contact paper from a previous project and look at how well it matches. It's just that newspaper type of print from Amazon, but this color definitely goes with what I have going on the outside. This is all going to kind of tie everything in together, and then so I'm going to put it on the top and then I'm going to go ahead and put it on the bottom so it's still pretty inside. But unfortunately, the contact paper did not want to stick to that kind of surface. It just plain simply fell off. So I went to the $1.25 store, is that what we're calling it now, and got some poster board in black for the top, and where I'll cut that down to size. And then for the bottom, where we actually screwed the bottom in, there's a little bit of a point that is sticking from the screws, so then I got the thicker poster board for that. So after adhering it to the poster board, I'm just going to go ahead and really put a lot of hot glue to stick it. You can't really screw it in or anything like that, any tacks, because it'll go right through. And no, I said no, y'all saw the poster board tags, but you know what happens when you take poster board tags off? It just shreds them. This is why I always try to be a week ahead in my videos, because you never know what's going to happen on a thrifted item when you're working on it. So as Chris was going to put the legs on this one, opened it up and the hinge broke. Yep, I guess the rust was keeping it all together, and me cleaning it off made it come apart. So now we have to do new hinges. So now I like them painted, but I just think they need a little bit more, just something to spike somebody's interest when they see them in our booth, that they're just not plain. So I went on to Pinterest. I started looking to see what like vintage suitcases kind of looked like. And I saw a lot of like travel stamps, tags, or whatnot. So I went looking for ones that I could copy and paste and put into my Excel program and print out on tissue paper. So there's a lot of ways that you can attach tissue paper to your copier paper. After doing a previous video, I had lots of people share them with me, but plain and simply, you just have to work with what works for you and what works for your printer, because they are all definitely different. So I always like to put the shiny side down. I don't really know if that matters or not, and then I cut my tissue paper a little bit smaller than what my copier paper is, and then I have some Dollar Tree double stick tape, and then along the whole top I will put a roll of double stick tape, attach it to the copier paper, and then do a couple just to hold it down. That's what agrees with my printer that it will print on. So do you see what I'm saying? I think I did a pretty good job. I'm very proud of my paint job on this suitcase, especially from the hot mess it was. But now it just looks a little blasé, a little plain. I love the handle, the silver hardware, but oh, yep. I went to town and I just printed off a ton of these little stamps, these little labels, we're going to call them. Some of them were in a little bit of a color. Some of them were with white. Yep, I had to cut every single one of them out. And now I just get to use some Mod Podge and apply them. Now after the Mod Podge has dried, I did not put it on the top, only underneath. I'm going in with a little bit of antiquing wax and a wet wipe just to tone down that really white. You can kind of see where the glue was underneath, so I definitely didn't want it to, those white labels really to stick out, so just coloring them just a bit. Now for this one, it's going to be a little bit more challenging, so I wanted to have it size appropriate on the top of this suitcase. So I went to my Excel, I had copy and pasted this image off of Pinterest, and it just says Vintage Edition number 7. But now I did do it on the tissue paper, so now I need to find my pieces and parts and then start to cut off my edges. So, yep, so just a little bit of work in putting it together. And then it is really easy to cut the tissue paper when it's attached to copier paper still. So I just, for my peace of mind in trying to make sure that my image is nice and level and even, I cut it as close to the wording as I can get to, so I didn't make raw edges this time, but don't worry about that. I will get to that next. Now I'm just trying to make sure that I am centered as best as I can. So this has been suggested so many times with tissue paper and decoupage paper. Now I tried it with polycrylic and it really didn't make a difference. So I thought, you know what, I'm using Mod Podge and some tissue paper, and why not have the iron, some parchment paper, and seeing if it makes it nice and smooth. And it did. It does work with the Mod Podge, but not so much the polycrylic. And then I just still want to make this look like it's a label, so I'm not going in with antiquing wax at the moment. All I'm doing right now is just blending that line in. It's just tissue paper, so a little bit of the original paint color, a little bit of a stenciling brush from the Dollar Tree store, and my finger just to blend in. I don't really want it to be that crisp line, so I want to blend it in a little bit. And now I will go in with a wet wipe and a little bit of antiquing wax. That'll get rid of those lines. I'm still just going to try to stay as much as possible just on the tissue paper itself. And it's probably going to blur or blend or bleed, I guess, the black of the letter a little bit. So I don't want it to be heavily wet. Now, after our trip to Menards, Chris is going to be replacing these hinges. Now, we had the hinges, but just the way we needed screws in a bolt of a certain size to hold the hinges in place. So, yep, what is a project if you don't have to go to the home store at least once or twice during a project? So, I painted them up to match with the rub and buff, and now he's just putting them on for me. I guess it's better that they broke on me and not on somebody that was buying this piece. And the last thing that he's going to do to this piece is put on a type of a hinge, so when you open up the top that it doesn't just go flying open. So since the fabric, it was fabric that was holding that with a couple screws, bolts in place, he's just going to apply some wire. I don't know if they might store a little bit in this. It's definitely a decorative piece, but just so it doesn't go flapping open, he's going to apply this hinge. And now I'm going to finish this piece off with a couple layers of polycrylic. I want to make sure that my paint is on there really good. I definitely want to seal in all these little labels I made with tissue paper also. Okay, so what did you think? I know, oh my gosh. These suitcases, the one was definitely one step away from the landfill. I know that for sure. But I definitely think I was able to save it. But I know what? I asked God for a suitcase and there it was. So you cannot... Yep, okay, I'm taking what I'm given. I understand. So yes, I was able to save it. Thank you, Chris, for ripping all that yucky innards out. The one wasn't terrible shape. The innards, of course, were, you know, that's just where the smell collects and you just, nothing you can do. You just need to rip it out and yeah, I don't want to sell anything that's smelly. And I could have left it as is, but I'm not really sure if the Goldie would have sold. And I don't really have a place for these in my house, so I definitely wanted to make them to resell. And then after getting them all painted up, and then I'm like, oh, they kind of look, yeah, you know. And I have to be careful with transfers and decoupage paper. I don't want to overdo it. So I just thought, okay, let me go to Pinterest, let me research a little bit of vintage suitcases, see how they're well traveled, and you know, just trying to get an idea to kind of still keep that theme. So thank you, Pinterest, and all of you that post on Pinterest so I can have inspiration. So I hope that you enjoyed today's content. Yep, I wanted to make these sturdy as side tables. I have cats. I know they're like, oh, you bring something in, they jump on it, kids, people. So I don't want anything that would have made the legs come off. Yeah, it probably would have been nice to do wood, but wood is still too expensive right now to buy. So these were very cost efficient on Amazon for metal legs. They will be fine. Yep, we always have our wants, but sometimes our budget changes what we want to do. So, but I definitely love how these turned out. I know that they're nice and sturdy, and I hope that somebody, when they get their turn in our booth, will love them too. So thanks again for watching today's video, guys. And as always, thank you for being part of our YouTube family. And if you're new and you're checking out our content for the first time, and you liked what you saw, please hit that subscription button along with the notification bell so you know we've uploaded a new video. And we will see you next time, guys, and you can see what we're up to. Bye!